Hey, good afternoon, Fargo. Welcome to Talk of the Town with Jon Adams. I can't be any more excited than I am today with all the nice hot wind and weather and everything. I'm just delighted. Like I like to say, I'm tropical, okay? And I got to tell you, winters take their toll on me. It is what it is, but I'll tell you what, I really do enjoy this blast of hot air. Although my lawn is already sprouting dandelions, so I'm gonna have to get the guy on that. But welcome to Talk of the Town. We were gonna have a couple young ladies on, but they had to cancel at the last minute. So this is what we call the classic Jon Adams pivot, which by the way is great because there were a number of topics that I was going to talk about a couple weeks ago that I wasn't able to get to. And so this show, there's three main topics that I think we should discuss and that are of interest to me because I want to hear what people have to say about these topics and in no particular order. As you guys know, I'm at Davies, and I get to engage the kids and I get to talk to the students about various topics. And one of the topics that I wanted to talk to them about is how do they see the future? You know, because everybody has an idea. You know, everybody's telling me, well, these kids do this, they're this and that. And I wanted to get the perspective. And somebody can tell me, are these Gen Zers that are in high school? I assume they are. Gen X is like the next, and we're boomers. But, you know, I started asking questions because I wanted to know, this is a tumultuous time, right, for everybody. I mean, I've said it. I think it's the Great Reset or another Great Reset where in the United States we're going through transition. And so I think that there was the Industrial Revolution where we went through transition. In the 60s, we went through social transition. And now I think this is a combination of both because technology is changing the way that we will live going forward, especially with AI. I find it interesting that we're talking about bringing about back all these manufacturing jobs, okay, that we are going to build America. We're going to do all these things. But according to sources, according to the talking heads, a lot of the jobs that come back will be automated, that will be done through AI or done through robots or, you know, so it begs the question, if they're right, where do Americans fit in that? Where does the American worker fit in the new transition to another great reset? And so I got on the computer and I started to look, and I didn't pay close attention, but I started to look at future jobs. So one of the things that I always told my sons is, when you look at what you want to do for a living, make sure that it has a future at least 10 years, a lifespan of at least 10 years. Meaning that don't go into a job that in 5 years is going to be obsolete because of AI. And so I asked some of the seniors that were graduating at Davies, I said, so how do you guys see the future? Are you excited for the future? Do you have trepidation? To a person, they said they think great things are to come. And of course, I posed a question, well, even with, you know, I mean, there's a certain amount of upheaval and unrest, but the 8 kids that I had this conversation with, to a person, they all felt like we were going to be fine, okay? And I thought it was great because in my head, I'm worried sick about where we're going, you know? And you know, my generation, we're taught to be pragmatic. We're taught to look at life the way it is, not through rose-colored sunglasses. Let's look at the facts of the matter and not what we think is going to happen. So for me, doing my research, doing my homework and stuff like that, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. There's a lot of moving pieces to this. And these young people, when I asked about federal issues, to a person, they really couldn't. And I asked them, I said, so what do you think about all that's happening in today's society? And I found it interesting that they said that I think we're gonna do great things and we're moving in the right direction. When I talked about or mention, hey, well, what do you think about what's happening federally? What do you think what's happening around the world globally? To a person, they they could pick out part of the issues and say, well, this, and this, but the whole global being, the whole global conversation eluded them. And I think that's partly because they're young and we only look at what's in front of our face. And, I've said it before, as human beings, we only really concern ourselves with our world, you know? I mean, the world view at large is whatever we think, like for me, as far as the economy goes, I don't look any further than Fargo, okay? And if Fargo is doing well, Mr. Adams is doing well. So I'm talking to these young people, and I got a sense that they're very optimistic, But are they optimistic because they don't know, they don't see some of these trends, they don't see the peaks and valleys, or do they genuinely have their hand on the pulse of what's going on in the United States? So that's one topic. And in addition to that, we also talked about the baby boomers and Gen X ruin life for Gen Z. Economically, socially, we're going to talk about that. And then there's a couple other topics. The last thing is I said that Donald Trump was elected as a course correction for how liberal and how inclusive and how generous we had become as a nation. Meaning that when I talk about the free money giveaway, that was too much for people. And the free money giveaway was looked and frowned upon. We're giving money here, we're forgiving student loans. Well, the course correction, and let's put somebody in who's, I'm not even going to say fiscally responsible because I don't know if that's the case yet. But it's the polar opposite of what we've had for the last 4 years. And so I'm going to talk about that because there are some interesting things that have happened on the way to all of the course corrections made by the Trump administration and the federal government and society at large, because there's also this thing that's happening in terms of a course correction. And there are 4 things that have happened in the past year that say that there's a course correction to the course correction. I hope you guys are following all this because in my head it makes perfect sense. So the first is last year a young man killed a CEO of United Health, I believe it was, right? That was a course correction to what that individual felt that company was doing to him. He was distressed, he was distraught about it, and so he felt desperate or some type of way that the only thing that he could think to do as a last resort was to take this man's life. Now, I'm not saying that he's right or wrong. That's not what I'm getting at here, but I want people to understand the concept. We're living in an age now where if you think you have the solution to correct a problem, you should act upon it. Okay, and I don't know if it's out of desperation, if it's hey, notoriety, or I'm going to change, martyrdom, whatever it is, we're seeing these things play out in real time in society. And on the one hand, it's frightening, but on the other hand, it should give people pause, okay? And in every one of these instances, there's a power position. There's someone on top, and there was someone feeling the pressure from the person that has the power. And innately, I shouldn't say innately, but in all of these situations, the person in the power position didn't make it out of the situation. Okay? So now we have something where we say, hey, we don't like how liberal our country has become, and we've moved the needle to the other side where we're saying that it's conservative and we're back to, I'm not going to say family values because that's crap, okay? We're not pushing family values in this administration, please. But what I'm saying is, um, and let's say this. I'm going to say this right now. I was fed up with political correctness. Okay? I mean, it's one thing to voice an opinion. It's another thing to be so into your opinion that you think that I have to move differently because of your opinion. And I tell my kids this. Everybody can have an opinion, but there are facts that surround an opinion. And when you see those facts, okay, if you're smart, you're going to look at the opinion and then look at the facts. And if the facts don't support the opinion, then why, what are we doing here? It's just like science. Right now there's the big vaccines this, vaccines that. Well, let's just look at the science. And if the science, empirical data, which means that it actually makes sense, if the empirical data is there and 1 + 1 is 2, then we go with the facts. So when I talk about these incidents that have come up, I want you guys to look at the facts surrounding the thing, and then I want to hear what you guys have to say. Big Game James says we're up against the break. This is Jon Adams for Talk of the Town. If you want to call in, the phone number is 501. Geez, I don't even know what area code that is. 701-293-9000. Hey, welcome back to Talk of the Town with Jon Adams. I'm in studio by myself. I'm looking out at the hazy day. It looks hazy. I guess there, and James, I don't know this, but are there wildfires in Canada this year again?
There were this past weekend. Dean had mentioned it. If you had seen what looked like it might have, been a little bit kind of thunderstormy or cloudy or smoky of any sorts. So I would imagine that there's still something going on of some sorts. I just don't know for certain.
I thought maybe it was the barbecuing that I've been doing lately, because I got both the smokers up and running.
Hey, as long as they're rolling. A couple days ago, I couldn't keep the grill lit for the reasoning of the high winds. Yep. But since that died off, it's been another day or two of grilling for us.
So last year we built a privacy fence on our deck. Well, we put in a new deck, and there's a 8-foot privacy fence, strictly not for privacy, but that's where the grill sits so that I can grill and not be affected by the wind. So
it's ingenious.
Well, we've lived there for close to 26 years, so I figured, when we built the deck, I might as well do that. So, so I guess there may be still haze from the fires. Whatever it is, it's a beautiful day out. Unfortunately, it's dry. My yard is taking a beating, but we'll get the sprinklers out up and running. But anyway, welcome back to Talking the Town with Jon Adams. I was talking. I put out 3 topics, and one was the whole immigration thing. So, my premise has always been, hey, fine, shut all the borders down. Let's document everybody, and let's get some work visas. So Nebraska is, according to whatever sources I'm looking at, they say that Nebraska is scheduled to go bankrupt over the next 3 months simply because there's not enough workers to do the farm work and the processing and all that type of stuff. And you can get on YouTube and you can see farmers on their Real People talking about how their migrant workers left after the ice raid started. And that's a very real thing. So here we have people that they depend on these migrant workers, and I assume some illegals. Or, it seems now that you don't even have to be illegal to leave the country. So I get why people are nervous. Okay, but here we have people that are losing their livelihoods, and Nebraska produces a lot of foodstuffs for us, and that's going to be felt down the line. It has to be, because there's going to be a gap that's not going to be filled, and the question is, how does it happen? How do we fix it? So then the question becomes, we're trying to figure out this immigration piece, and now I guess we're going to allow some asylum seekers, and I don't know if they're asylum seekers because I don't know the situation that would cause them it doesn't sound like they have to leave South Africa. They want to leave South Africa. And if I'm wrong, somebody call in and tell me, but, when we're trying to round people up and we're trying to document everybody, and it certainly sounds like these people are being fast-tracked to citizenship or fast-tracked to whatever, over doing it the right way. Now, I have heard for the past 2 years, it's okay if you come to this country, but you need to enter the right way. And why are we fast-tracking people that haven't stood in line and they get to jump ahead of everybody else? What's the difference? What's the difference that we've decided to take people in? Because I think that's what Joe Biden was doing, and he was sending these people to different cities, and rightfully so, there was a big uproar. Huge uproar. What are we doing bringing these people in? And, they didn't wait in line like everybody else, and I'm not hearing the same outrage. I need somebody to call in and tell me, what is the difference between the people that were at the southern border and these South Africans? I want you guys to ponder that. And then, so this is, again, the course correction to what we've had the last 4 years is Donald Trump and conservatism. And now we're seeing incidents of course corrections to the course corrections. So I wonder, when the CEO of United Health was killed, did other CEOs, beef up their security? Okay. Did they tighten security in the building? Did they get security around their houses? Or look at their business practices? See, now the first three make sense, but the third one, it's like, doesn't that make more sense than the first three? I'll let you decide. But here's the point. The gentleman that committed this crime thought, you know what? His only recourse was to take a guy out at the top. If that doesn't give people pause, if you're a CEO in a company and now you have people that feel like, hey, you know what? I'm okay with taking somebody out. Who's next? And the funny thing is this guy became such a folk hero that other people, it started to become a running joke about who would be next, which I thought was, that's terrible. You know? But this is the society we live in. Second one, most recently, there was a young man down in Florida, and by all accounts, he was bullied by two brothers. Okay? And at a track situation, the brothers come up, and it's a bully situation, and the kid pulls out a knife, and he stabs one of the kids dead. A course correction to the course correction. Now, like I said, I'm not taking a side either way because, to me, you know, this young man, he didn't go hunting for them, okay, but he certainly put himself in a situation where he had to take action. Or maybe he was fed up with what had been happening to him too, and it sounds like this is over the course of 6 months that he had run-ins with these young men, and he felt the only thing he could do was to carry a knife, and unfortunately that ended tragically. So that's scenario number 2. So are you starting to see the theme, is what I'm saying. We can course correct and we can say we're doing this for the common good, but if you are changing the mindset of the people that are being affected by what you do and they become desperate, what ends up happening? So now we have 2 instances where the course correction was, I need to kill somebody. And this is a very real thing because, you know, I'm sure that there are other incidents, but these are the incidents that have caused a media firestorm. And in the back of my head, all I keep thinking is, what led to these people doing what they did? You know, the young man at the track meet. Let's have an honest dialogue about why that young man, by all accounts, a great student, but he felt so desperate and helpless that he took another young man's life. The young man that killed the CEO felt so desperate, or you know, I don't know if he's trying to make a statement or he wants to be a legend or he wants to be a martyr, but he felt some type of way. And the funny thing is, in both of these instances, it doesn't appear that this is a mental issue thing. It doesn't appear and if I'm wrong, call in. But we need to understand what's happening in society. And so here we have 2 situations. And for me, I wonder, these people that are in positions of power, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like money. It doesn't necessarily have to be about status. But in every situation, there's somebody that's in power, somebody that's seeking power, or is being affected by power. And in these 2 instances, both of these people were affected. Third one, I think it was Cincinnati. A father whose son had been killed by a police officer barreled into another police officer not connected with his son's death and killed him. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, what is going on when people feel so powerless that they do things that goes against human nature? Tragic. So it's like, all right, so now I've mentioned 3 things. People are being impacted that don't have power, and they're acting in ways that we that I guess we could predict. But I'll tell you what, um, I've had discussions with my friends, and it's like, hey, if anybody harms your child, what would you do? What would you do? If you felt that your child or your family member was harmed unjustly, would you exact vengeance? And I can tell you that to a person, the overall answer was yes. Now we can say that because we're not in the moment, but in this case, this father did, and it's like, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. That's different. That's different because it used to be thoughts and prayers. You know, it used to be take the settlement money and just move on with your life. We're not seeing that these days. We're seeing people act out on things that we think are far fetched. And I wonder, are we getting to the breaking point in our society where people say, you know what, I'm not going to take it anymore? Big Game James says we're up against the break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this topic because I think it's important to keep these things in our mind in the forefront because we're going to talk about accountability when we come back. Hey, welcome back to Talk of the Town with Jon Adams. We're cooking with gas, as I like to say, and I'll tell you what. As I was looking over my show notes for this segment, I thought to myself, I'm going to pivot a little bit because those were the three examples, but now I want to talk about something. And I brought the individual examples up to say this. It's just a matter of time before groups feel the same helplessness and despair that these individuals feel. And through social media, okay, we are going to have a larger problem. It has to happen, okay? It has to happen if we're not holding our leaders accountable. And every week I talk about accountability, but we're starting to see people in positions of power, for lack of a better word, be taken out, okay? I mean, anybody that will be brazen enough to run over a cop, I mean, I'm sorry. There has to be a line, okay? But for people in society to feel so desperate that that's their only move, and I'm not condoning that by any means because I don't think anybody deserves in tragedy to get what they get, but it's like we better start looking at the causes of these things. You know, we can't bury our head in the sand and not pretend like these things aren't happening because there's injustice. When people stop feeling that there's a sense of fairness, then all bets are off. And I can tell you that there's a lot of that in today's society, particularly, and I'm not going to talk about the black community or immigrants. I'm going to talk about socioeconomics. Because, boy, I sounded almost like I was stumping for James. I sounded like I was running for office there. But I'm telling you, it's about socioeconomics. And as people start getting more and more desperate and they get further away from the American dream, these are the things that are going to happen. And I'm sorry, I don't see anybody in Washington, and I should just say government, because I'm not overly impressed with our city commissioners, okay? Every year we're struggling with debt, okay? We spend money that I think at times are in very foolish ways. And so we have a 10-year, in the city of Fargo, we have a development committee that they're doing a 10-year timeline of what they think the city is going to look like. And I can say if they don't start listening to the citizens, we could end up looking a lot like Minneapolis. I never thought Minneapolis, or Minnesota for that matter, would be what it is right now. And, you know, just like these farmers that are losing their farms and you know, people that are losing their homes and their livelihood, never thought it could happen to them on both sides of the aisle. I'm sure some of these government workers that have been downsized never thought it would happen to them, or they crossed their fingers and hoped. So just like they didn't think it could happen, if you don't think that the U.S. people or people in the United States at some point won't absolutely tear it up, if we continue down the track of creating hopelessness and despair, just look at what happened to Target, look at what happened to Tesla. Look at what's starting to happen to Walmart. These corporations, they're not getting it. They're not getting that you cannot act any type of way towards your customers and expect you to support them. But I'm going to pivot now because I want to talk about something that's happening on the Dark Continent, which I can tell you last August, I floated an idea that I had read about on the internet and I had seen on the Al Jazeera network and the BBC. They talked about the fact that the countries of Africa are trying to form a United States of Africa. And I can tell you, I got a lot of comments you could just imagine the comments that were thrown about. They're not organized, you know, they barely have running water, they live in huts and this and that. But you know what we're finding out? A lot of their cities, a lot of these countries are technologically advanced. And so there's a tiny country that is, by all accounts, or was the poorest country in Africa. And the name is Burkina Faso. And I want you guys to start looking it up because this is the linchpin for change. Okay? And Burkina Faso was a French colony. Okay? The French dominated their economy, and the leader Traoré came in and he kicked the French out. And they took responsibility. So before they kicked the French out, they produced tons and tons of gold, right? But they didn't have any gold reserves. This guy kicked the French out. Now they have $1 billion in gold reserves. The second thing he did was, and it's funny because this guy got in office, he reduced the salary of anybody in government by half and gave it back to the people. Does that sound familiar? Sounds like Donald Trump's plan, but the difference is I ain't seen none of that government trickle-down money yet, but maybe it's coming. Trump should tell me that that's the plan. I haven't seen it yet. But anyway, this guy, he has transformed this tiny nation, okay? The interesting thing which we need to take note is that our generals labeled this guy a terrorist. I want you to go and look at the way the people of Burkina Faso and the neighboring nations are supporting this guy. He's been labeled a terrorist. They've tried to kill him over 18 times. Over 18 times they've tried to kill this guy. He just met with Vladimir Putin, and Putin said, we will spend all the resources and military we have to protect this man. 7 other countries have joined with Burkina Faso right now to build an economic base in Africa. Okay, now if you know anything about history, Muammar Gaddafi was labeled a terrorist and a dictator, and Barack Obama killed him. We all know history tells us that. It's not supposition, it's not speculation. This is a matter of record. So now here we see African nations taking back their land, their minerals, okay, and building their countries. And at one point, the Chinese and the Soviets were meddling in this thing, but instead of pushing and continue the meddle, both of these countries decided, you know what, we're going to partner with these guys, and we're going to buy their resources the way they want them to, instead of going and stealing resources or destabilizing the government. That is a very interesting concept. It's a pivot from what Putin and the Chinese normally have done. If you look at it, Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Liberia, all of these countries have had their minerals stripped from them and shipped to other countries, to other imperialist countries. And in each case, these Africans have now started kicking China and the Russians out, as well as Indians. So now if you want to do business in Nigeria, you actually have to become a partner the right way to economically viable in Nigeria. I want that to sink in because this is very significant. So now with the political shift, I can tell you that China has changed course, and now they're sending technology to Africa. Okay? They're sending technology. The Soviets, wow. Putin and his group are helping build their infrastructure and their military. So now down the line, what does international foreign policy look like for the United States? I want you guys to think about that. Big Game James says we're up against the break. When I come back, I'll wrap this up. It's not all doom and gloom, but I do have some thoughts as to how we can still remain the greatest power on the planet. If you want to call in, the phone number is 293-9000. Wow. We got to get moving. We got to beg, borrow, steal. I didn't see that coming in those lyrics. But anyway, welcome back to Talk of the Town with Jon Adams. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. So I've been talking about the course corrections that are happened to the course correction. You know, we had a liberal agenda for 4 years. Now we have a conservative agenda. And now we're starting to see in 6 months, we're starting to see a correction to the corrections. And it doesn't look good. To me, it doesn't look good because there are national incidents that have taken place where people have lost their lives that have been in power positions that maybe thought they had power positions and they really don't. But what it comes down to is this. The people that feel that desperation are no longer waiting for thoughts and prayers. And I need people to understand this. No longer are people waiting for thoughts and prayers. The young man that ran over the police officer, he didn't wait to see the outcome, whether the officer who killed his son was going to be tried and convicted. You know, he couldn't wait that long, and guess what? He did the unthinkable. He killed somebody that wasn't even involved. But this is what happens. This is where our society is moving, where if you don't feel like you have recourse, then people start taking things into their own hands. And so I would say this, at some point, we have to make sure that the levers of justice are there for everybody so that people don't feel desperate. The guy who murdered the CEO. I hope it's a wake-up call for corporations and these guys that are making these big bonuses that people are no longer going to accept their excuses and their largesse, so to speak, and that there may be somebody out there that says enough is enough. Well, I know that if I'm in that position, I'm looking at my business practices. And on the personal level, I'm just going to say it. We need to start leaving people to their own devices, okay? We see it, they call them Karens. I think it's funny because I know a couple Karens, and, you know, the Karen syndrome where people feel like they can act and say whatever they want to whoever they want. That's what's happening. That's the biggest course correction. You know, we have a situation where a bully lost his life because the person had enough. So where do we go from here? Because I just laid it out, and it's like, man. Okay, first, let's start with we need to find our spiritual center. I said it before, Billy Graham, you know, he was the nation's minister, you know? And even locally, where are our church leaders? Okay? When the city is coming out saying, hey, we don't have an obligation to take care of the homeless, I don't remember hearing anything from any church leaders. And if they did, please call in and tell me what they did so I can give an apology. And I say this every time I get on this rant. I've yet to hear it. But we used to look to the church for guidance, and now we don't. I think that's where it starts, the spirituality side of it. And I don't care if you're Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist. We have to gravitate toward that piece. You know? Second, there's the stay in your lane portion. If you're not out there positively trying to help somebody, you might want to keep your mouth shut. Because the course correction may be something that you don't like. That's the facts of it. We are no longer a polite society as I could see it in the United States. Okay? There are pockets of polite conversation, you know, but for the most part, you know, people are fed up. And there's, I mean, look, you don't have to look any farther than the TV or social media, you know? But here's the bright spot. The bright spot is the young people that I talk to in the schools. The bright spot are the young people that are my kids' age. They understand it. Their growth is amazing, and I feel at times that we as old heads, we're stifling their ability to have love and concern and compassion. I really do. I think that sometimes instead of sitting back And I had this conversation today where I was explaining to one of the kids that he felt like his dad was just, he's too overbearing, he's too this and that. And I had to explain to him that parents are hard because they don't want you to suffer the slings and arrows that they suffered. And the only thing they know how to do is protect you from those things so that you don't have to be a part of it. And this young man said, yeah, but my dad has made me strong enough to handle it. Why won't he let me handle it? And I said, what father wants his son to have to handle difficult times before he needs to? And it was a very enlightening conversation that this young man said, well, I wish he would so that he could see that he raised me correctly. And I thought, man, that sounds familiar. And it's a conversation that I've had with both of my sons. Hey, Dad, you taught us how to be, man. You know, back up a little bit. and in a lot of ways I've learned, in a lot of ways I still have a long way to go, but I'm getting there. At 60, I'm getting there, and I think part of it is because I'm getting tired and I'm running out of gas. And so I just go, that's not a fight we need to fight anymore. But we do live in Fargo, and I was out at the golf course, and look, man, if the city of Fargo was run like Maple River, we would all be in heaven, baby. Because you know what? It's just one big family. Now, we have our dust-ups and whatnot, but for the most part, the place feels like home. And our membership has increased, and even the new members and the people that come out, it's just a good time. It's just people hanging out, you know, bonding over golf. But more than that, it's the conversations. You know, it's the back and forth. And we have some pretty lively discussions. And so, you know, again, these are the things that we need. We need communication. You know, we need to talk about it. We don't have to agree, but I keep saying it. We can't let the computer, we can't let social media dictate in this city how we move. You know, it's been a while since I've looked at the city commission, the city commission, and I'm sure they're happy about it. But at some point, you know, I'll take aim at them again and look at accountability. The last thing I want to mention is next month is Juneteenth, and I'm helping raise money as well as get donations for the Juneteenth celebration in Fargo and Moorhead. Please give me a call. I will be talking about it next week. You guys have a great week, and as always, stay black.